NRL Fantasy Round 1 is in the books, and I've just come from watching the Eels play. So you can guess what my mood's like. Not a great performance from Parramatta, but look, I'm here to talk to you about NRL Fantasy, so we're going to focus on that. Now, the last time I won Fantasy, the Eels won the spoon, so maybe it's a good sign. All right, so Raiders v Warriors. First up here, Xavier Savage. He pumped out 2 tries there, had a bunch of stats, a bunch of offloads as well. He is suspended, so not a guy we're going to look at. Hudson Young, absolute beast, 65 points, but again, very expensive. So not someone I'm targeting, but if you have him, you're happy with that. Matt Tomoko, a bit of a pod here. We have a lot of center options, right? We've got Rob Toyer, we've got Dylan Lucas. A lot of these guys are pumping out good scores, Ruben Garrick. So we don't really need Tomoko, but if you did jump on the pod there, and if you do want a pod, he's an absolute beast. Zach Hosking. So let's talk about this because for Hosking, the minutes weren't fantastic. So 67 minutes there. I've got Hosking in my team, so I'm pretty happy with the score here, 62. His PPM was fantastic. Work rate was good. The attacking stats will come. So I'm pretty happy about Hosking. If I didn't have Hosking, I'd probably look to buy him. And if Humphreys gets named, it might be a case where you downgrade a gun to Hosking and then upgrade a cheapie to Humphreys or something like that. So Hosking, I think, is a buy. Egan, not going to overreact there. Fogarty, good for his price there. Horsburgh, so 59 minutes for Corey Horsburgh. Very good sign for him. Got moved to, technically he didn't get moved to lock, but Papali'i came on at lock late in the game. Late in the pre-game, and Horsburgh was technically the lock in my head, right? So he's sort of playing lock there for Canberra. Nearly 60 minutes. He's pretty good. I mean, at that price, though, he's pretty expensive. So if you don't have him, you don't have to break your team to get him, but I'm super happy to have him. And if you can get him, then he's a good option. Fisher Harris is another one. So 46 minutes. I think those will come up. I mentioned Starling too. He played a bit of lock in this game. So started at hooker, moved to lock for a bit. Paddy came on for about 19 minutes. So good score from him. And he's someone you could definitely consider buying as well. And then, Mitch Barnett, I wouldn't overreact to this one. Played not a lot of minutes in this game. The minutes will go up. I'm fairly certain they will. I don't own Mitch Barnett, but if I did, I would be sticking with him for another 1 to 2 weeks and hope those minutes do tick upwards. Tamale, probably a guy you got to target if you don't have him. He was an absolute monster in this game. It was 49 points without any tries. So for a winger, you're pretty happy with that. So I'd go and get him. And then, guys like Harris Tavita, Ford, I'm not really reading into too much. Aaron Clark, Dylan Walker, not guys you want to have in your team. So if you do have them, they're sells. And then down the bottom here, Metcalf, we can talk about him. He probably should still be a low 40s average. That's kind of what I have him penciled in for. This was a disaster of a game, but he will have better games than this. He did most of the kicking, so I'm not super worried about Metcalf. And then down the bottom here, nothing too crazy to go into. So I'll roll through the next game because we're going to do all 8 games. This is a very concise sort of catching you up. So if I talk about a player and it's a bit quick, just rewind a bit and watch that one again. Now, Isaiah Yeo. I'm not too crazy about the score. So he had the try there. It was a good game. Didn't have crazy stats in this game, though. So without the try, it would have been like a 50 score, 53, something like that. So not a crazy day for him, but the try definitely boosted it up. Fanua Blake is the same. I'm not rushing to buy these guys, but they were good scores. Blake Brayley, a lot of tackles in this one. He's not going to make 61 tackles every week. So again, not overreacting to that. And then like Ramian, McInnes, Nikora. I'll talk about Nathan Cleary here for a sec. So I've got him at the top here. So for Cleary, not a lot of attacking stats here. Only the 72 run meters, but the kick meters are crazy. So 649 kick meters. When we get down to Cole, you'll see, but Cole only had 21 kick meters. So Cleary is doing all the kicking. He scored this 56 without obscene attacking plays. So I'm cool with Cleary. I think Cleary's a guy that I'm going to captain next week 100% against the Roosters. He's locked in as my captain next week. So I'm not panicking at all. If you don't have Cleary, I still think you're going to feel that pain in the next week or two. Lindsay Smith played more minutes due to no Liam Henry. That's my read on that. So I wouldn't overreact and buy him. Also pretty expensive at 600K. Laurie won't play every week, so don't go buy him. Edwards, Martin. Wilton was a bit of value, but I wouldn't rush out to buy him. Then moving down the list here, Nico Hines. The Nico Hines numbers are not pretty. So you've got only 164 kick meters. That's a bit of a disaster. He's playing that more running, attacking 6 sort of role, which is not good for fantasy. So he won't be a guy you target for fantasy unless Trindle disappears or something like that. Papali'i playing off the bench, still not interested. And then rolling down the list here, is anyone else? Jack Cole, we'll talk about him. So 29 points here for Jack Cole. Doesn't really kick the ball, so needs some attacking plays, needs some run meters, needs some tries. He'll get those in certain games. So next week is a matchup where he might get it. And I might start him next week versus the Roosters, actually, because the Chooks were leaking some points last week, and Penrith will probably take advantage too. So, yeah, Cole might be a start for me next week, which I don't think many people will be looking at that. So if you go with that, then it's a bit risky, but it definitely has some upside. All right, moving through Chooks v Broncos, and this was a pretty fun one. We saw Payne Haas absolutely show out in this game. So 49 minutes, 81 points. Now, there's good and bad there, right? So 81 points is fantastic. The 49 minutes is a bit of a disaster, but he was in a game where they were absolutely destroying the Roosters. So potentially we don't read into that too much, and those minutes bump up to 55 to 60, and suddenly we're not concerned at all. Right. So look at these numbers here. So you got the try assist there, nice offload from him. 9 tackle busts is absolutely crazy. 4 offloads there, a forced turnover and 165 meters. Like, there's nothing about this that is not replicatable for him. If anything, 165 meters is quite low for Payne Haas. So he could easily keep pumping out big numbers and be the best player in fantasy this year. I would say he's going to be behind Nathan Cleary, but if I was targeting Haas or Yo, I'm probably going to go for Haas just for that upside, because he didn't have to do anything crazy to get this 81 points. Like, that's pretty insane. Whereas Yo, he's going to pump out an easy 50 points for you every week and then bump it up to 70 every now and then. Usually it's going to be around 60. He never really goes below 50. So he's more safe, whereas Haas has that big upside, and that's sort of what I chase. Connor Watson, he definitely benefited from injuries here. So Watson had a great day out, right? 49 tackles. A few run meters there as well, offload, all that kind of thing. But for Connor Watson, so Nat Butcher was ruled out of this game late. We saw Victor Radley get a HIA early in this game too. A bunch of guys are missing from the Roosters side. Lenu's out as well. So the middle forward rotation was just totally ravaged, which is the perfect storm for Watson to play some lock minutes and play 80 minutes in this game. So, yeah, when he plays 80 minutes in the middle, he's an absolute machine. The concern is they're carrying a bench hooker, and when they're full strength, maybe he doesn't get those minutes. But will the Roosters ever be full strength? Like, it's starting to look like a year where they might struggle to get the full team out in the field. So, maybe Connor Watson just charges through and is one of the best players in fantasy and the best hooker in fantasy. So can't write him off 100%. Adam Reynolds, not interested at all. Great day for him, but not for me with Ben Hunt next to him. Pat Carrigan, 67 minutes here. Something to read into. 242 run meters as well. So for Paddy Carrigan, by the way, guys, you can access this in the match center in the app or on the website. You just click on the 3 lines on the top there. So you can check these out yourself too. But yeah, for Pat Carrigan, I would say if he gets that big role, so 67 minutes at prop, that kind of thing, he does it again next week, then he probably becomes a bona fide keeper. But again, I'm not rushing to break my team to go and buy Pat Carrigan. Jordan Ricky, not reading into it too much. Rob Toya, how about this game? So a couple of try assists for Toya, the 5 tackle busts, 140 meters run, no real negatives to speak of. He was very dangerous in a Roosters team that got absolutely ruined by the Broncos. So yeah, the young guy, if he keeps that spot, which I think he could. I mean, look, if Billy Smith comes back, it's just the issue is Mark Nawani-Tuase wasn't bad either. Like, their centers were actually the biggest strength. And we talked about that a bit last year where we thought those center matchups were really good. So they were going to, pull off some big scores. But yeah, for Robbie Toya, I think he should keep that spot, but there's no guarantees at all. Shibasaki, he was more of an attacking stat guy. So only the 74 minutes is a bit concerning, but he had the try assist, had a few nice plays in this one. No real negative stats to speak of. So 300K, he did a good job for you. He will bump down to a 30s average most of the time. So you'd forecast him for more like a 35, but they do have a good run of fixtures coming up. So maybe he just gets hot at the right time. Jesse Arthur's exactly the same. And then Ben Hunt, no interest. Reece Walsh will have big days in the coming month. Like, there'll be a day where we're all looking at Reece Walsh and thinking like, oh, damn, I wish I had his 80 points in my team. Like, it'll be very soon. Jezewski played huge minutes in this game, which was very surprising to me. So Piakura came on, got himself sin binned and moved off. I don't know. Like, the only way you can really believe in Jezewski is if you think Piakura is not a first-grade player. And he keeps getting picked for origin squads. Like, I just can't see Jezewski holding out this spot. Fluked that nice little try as well. So, it was a good day for him. If you started Jezewski, good on you. I think that he will be unplayable most of the time going forward. But if Piakura somehow gets himself suspended or something, then, for that period of time, then Jezewski will be the guy. I was very surprised by the minutes. That's all I'm going to say there. Like, Piakura must really be low on the pecking order with Madge. Selwyn Cobbo, 3 tries, 44 points, no interest there. Sandon Smith saved the day with that try saver, the try as well. A lot of ball running, so 103 run meters. A lot of ignoring his back rower, Angus Crichton, as well. So I think that won't work for them going forward. And I think his base stats might drop down a bit if he figures out that he's got to feed the outside man and Gus Crichton. But that's just me. I'm not an NRL coach for a reason. That's what I would be doing if I was him. And then Gus Crichton's right here. I'm a bit salty, as you can tell, as a Gus owner. But look, I'm not too fussed about this score. So 43 points. You had a couple of errors here, right? So I jumped across the 2 errors. And look, it was a bit of a disaster of a game for the Roosters. But the 2 errors there, he's got 3 offloads. The 2 errors were attempted offloads, right? So if you change those errors to offloads, it's a 6-point turnaround each. So you jump from 43 to 55, right? And then one of those was an attempt for a try assist. So you throw that in, it becomes like a 60 score. Like, you know what I mean? Like these come off some days, they don't come off other days. The Roosters are a bit desperate this game. It was a bit wet, all that. Like, I'm not justifying the score. 43 is not great, but he's going to have his days where all those things come off. And I'm good with it. I'm going to stick with Gus Crichton 100%. We saw Jermaine Hopgood kind of score pretty averagely. We saw Jacob Preston score below this as well. So, we don't have to panic too much. If you have Gus, I'd stick with him. Nafahu White, not that impressive considering all the players that were out. So I would be a bit concerned if I had him. Then rolling down the list here, who we got? Mark Noini Tuase, pretty good score, good base stats from him. Hetherington, only 43 minutes, 33 points. It's about his PPM. Bit of a disaster. 43 minutes is not enough for him. So if you have Hetherington, I would probably look at selling him in the next week or two. You could give him another week if you want to. Corey Pakes. So we talked about Corey Pakes in the preseason, and I said he's a 32 average in 57 minutes when he starts, and he scored 33 points in 57 minutes. And that was with a try too, right? So without that try, he jumps down to like high teens. So Corey Pakes is a bit of a dud for fantasy, I think, as well. He's just not gonna. He looked good in real life, but he's not going to produce points for your fantasy side. Rolling down the list here, Tedesco is going to get nice and cheap for us, 28 points. That's a bit of a disaster. But again, it was a game where they just got absolutely tailed up, so can't read into it too much. And then Victor Radley, he's going to get nice and cheap as well. 6 points there. Obviously, copped that HIA, which is rough for him. But, he went out and some other guys had to step up. And Pierre Kura, -9 points, got sin binned. It's just absolutely insane, because last year he came out and scored 0 in round 1. This year he's outdone it and scored -9. Just monstrously low scoring for round 1 games. In fact, Pierre Kura's average in round 1 games is -4.5. All right, going through Tigers v Knights. A bit to talk about here too. So Terrell May, 76 points, just absolutely unstoppable. And we look at the stats here: 65 minutes, 34 tackles. Had the 5 offloads, had a nearly 200 meters run. Like, this is great, and he can repeat this. Like, nothing about this score is unrepeatable. They need him out there. He didn't look tired. He didn't fall off tackles, all that sort of thing, right? So it's replicatable. And I'm not going to say he's going to average 76 this year, but could Terrell May outscore some of the top guys? Could he compete with Payne Haas, Isaiah Yeo, these sorts of guys? I think absolutely. If he gets that 65-minute roll, then he's going to be a guy who pumps out maybe a 65 average, right? 1 ppm. So overreact there. If you don't have him, you must go buy Terrell May. And if you do have him, congratulations, you have a winner. And then Kellen Ponga here, really good game from him. So 62 points is not anything to write home about, but it was a great base stat game from him. And we saw a lot of real effort plays from him as well, where he did a lot of things on defense that looked really good. And you don't really see it until, an ex-player breaks it down or someone else. But for Ponga here, had a couple of line breaks, some nice tackle breaks, but 200 meters run, 154 kick meters, bunch of kicks diffused. Just a very base stat heavy game from him, which makes me pretty confident that he'll be good this year. But the attack from Newcastle was not good at all. So that's where my concern comes in. But for Ponga individually, I'm pretty stoked. Dylan Lucas had that big run, which boosted his score up a bit. So again, looking at the stats, 34 tackles, 150 meters run, some tackle breaks, 56 points. You'll absolutely take it. Like we talked about Dylan Lucas, he's priced at 50. He averages about 55 when he starts in the back row. He scores a 56. So we got exactly what we asked for there. Then Leo Thompson could be a goer if he gets those minutes, but pretty expensive. Sharp was good, grabbed a try. Kai Pierce-Paul, bit of an underrated pod, but I won't go too deep. He's good. Twal, 50 minutes, 53 points. He will score that when he starts, but does he keep that spot? I'm a bit sus on it. Greg Marzu had the try and 5 tackle breaks, no tackles. But a bunch of offloads there, 162 meters run. This is sort of what I expected from Greg Marzu. So that sort of low 50s area, if you can grab some tries, we're looking at that first run of fixtures where he has some good run, where he can score some tries pretty easily. Lucky Galvin, 50, that's fine. Jerome Luai, 43. Again, looking at the stats here, bunch of missed tackles there. The kick meters were pretty evenly split with Galvin. The run meters are a bit lower than what I expect from Luai, but he did have a bit of an injury in that game as well. Dewey, Gagai, Sheila, Skelton was okay. Bradman Best was pretty quiet. Had a few plays that were nearly big plays. 200 meters run, 7 tackle breaks. Just didn't have that pop play, and that's sort of what you want if you're buying Bradman Best. Then down the list here, Seyfarth. I'll talk about Seyfarth because he played 64 minutes, had the HIA, went off for a while, 30 points. I don't have Seyfarth, but I wouldn't panic if I did, right? So he's going to play 80 minutes most weeks. That bumps up to sort of a mid-40s average. And in this game, if he played 80 minutes, he would have scored about 40, right? So I'm not super stressed about Seyfarth if I do have him. But, 475K, you can cop that. Just keep him going next week, unless you have a really good player to sort of pick up this round. Jack Bird, 52 minutes, 25 points, played on the edge back row spot a bit, which slowed his scoring down. But I would be selling him if you have him on your team for some reason. I don't know, playing off the bench, it's just a bit dicey. Like the 52 minutes is not enough. If he was being prioritized and getting 60 minutes, I'd think about it, but 52 is not enough. And then down the list here, no one else really to talk about. I mean, I mentioned to all of you, like you got to sell Royce Hunt, 15 points. He's just not going to get the minutes. So 30 minutes, 15 points. That's kind of what you can expect. I would say maybe it floats up to 35 minutes, 25 points at times, but it's not going to jump much past that. I will say Royce Hunt was pretty good in real life, though. So his impact in the real game was actually quite significant, but just didn't have the numbers for fantasy. Then here we got the Rabbitohs v. the Dolphins and Humphreys. Got to talk about Humphreys. So will Humphreys get named? That's a big question. So I'm going to tell you everything you need to know, but the answer is I don't really know for sure. Lewis Dodd was signed to South Sydney for $700K a year. So they paid big money for him to be their halfback. Lewis Dodd only plays halfback, right? That's the one position he plays. If Cody Walker's fit, then it's, Cody Walker's team, right? So it's going to be one of Lewis Dodd or Jamie Humphreys. Jamie Humphreys is really good in this game. Looked great. Did all the kicking. We'll talk about the stats in a sec. But for Jamie Humphreys, if it was on form, he'd be selected. If Bennett has another plan, he'll stick with his guys. So you're going to have to wait till Tuesday. When we do Teamless Tuesday here, by the way, it's 4 p.m. We go live. I will scroll down to South Sydney first thing on that video. Like we are going to South first thing. We're going to talk about Jamie Humphreys because he's the must-have option if he starts. So for him, stats here, we got a try assist, 30 tackles, no missed tackles. Got an offload, got 44 meters run, which I think will increase over time, and 732 kick meters. Just obscene numbers of kick meters. So absolutely dominant from a fantasy perspective. 75 points without doing anything crazy in attack as well. He could be Cleary 2.0. Like he's doing everything. Cody Walker did basically no kicking in this game. Cody Walker's score wasn't great, but yeah, Jamie Humphreys, if he gets that role, must have. Jai Arrow, Ewan Aitken will be back soon, and Arrow goes into the middle forward rotation. I wouldn't overreact to this. It's a great score. No negative stats, basically. But I wouldn't be rushing to go buy Jai Arrow. Asako, we talked about early in the preseason as a guy who has averaged 50 in the past. He came out and put on an attacking show in this game. Again, no negative stats, right? So the points really stack up when you have no negatives, and he had a pretty flawless game. 2 tries as well, it definitely helps with 66 points. Tommy Gilbert, we can talk about this here. So 65 points, 56 minutes, 59 tackles. And 100 meters run. Again, not a lot of negative stats here. Had a few offloads as well. So Tommy Gilbert at that price, very attractive. He's in my side, so I'm pretty stoked about it. But if I didn't have him, would I go rush and buy him? I still reckon I'm going to be conservative and say he's like a 50 to 52 average going forward. Like this was a pretty exceptional performance. I don't imagine he's going to be pumping out 59 tackles every week. I think 55 to 60 minutes and about 50 to 52 points. That's kind of where I have him penciled in. But if you do want to go get on, he's got a great break even coming to this week, so not a bad option. Koloamatangi was good, but I don't have any interest on the edge. Max Plath was good, don't have any interest on the edge. Scored that try, that kind of saved his score a bit. Herbie Farnworth, 56 points, so he was worth the money, and he didn't have any attacking stats basically either, so just the try assist there. But it was really built on 180 meters run, some offloads, tackle breaks, tackles, all that sort of jazz. Hamaso, better base stats from Hamaso actually. So 9 tackle breaks, 226 run meters. This was a real strong base game from him, which we haven't seen in the past. If Hamaso comes out and does this again next week, we might have to think about potentially buying him because his issue in the past has been he doesn't have the big base. but he pulls out attacking stats. Now, if you can add the base with the attacking stats, then this might be a leap year where he's really good. No one's considering Hamiso either. He would be a pod. And look, his percent of ownership is 11%, but that's not super serious fantasy players. So unless, there's probably a couple of you that do, but in general, most people aren't looking at Hamiso. So I'm going to keep my eyes on him for one more week and make a call on that one in a week's time. Then Marshall King didn't play the full 80, so I'm not that interested. Drake Gray, Katoa, Duncan. Duncan was pretty good, actually, but a bit too expensive off the bench. Fuiaki only played the 54 minutes, so he was pumping. I thought if he plays 80 minutes, I might have to go buy him. Didn't play 80, so we don't have to stress about that. Mama Zealous played 72 minutes, which is very encouraging, but 35 points is not great, and we need to pay attention to the team list. Also, 35 points with 45 tackles. Just missed tackles and basically no run meters, so bit of a disaster in terms of scoring. Hubner, 60 minutes is very encouraging, so he's a guy you could probably think about for your starting team. If you're desperate, you could put him in your 17. I don't mind him. Just keep an eye on what happens with Aitken when he comes back, because it potentially may mean Arrow moves to lock or Arrow moves to prop, or, we don't know what's going to happen there. Then the centers here got a lot of hype from the commentary team, but not much to talk about for fantasy. Tass, Walker will get a bit cheaper. Munro got hurt, so keep this in mind. Collarbone injury, not sure what it is, but that could be really damaging. And then down the list here, I was getting a lot of messages about Moale. Apparently, a lot of people and a lot of podcasts as well were talking about Moale. Bit of a disaster. So 15 points in about 30 minutes, I think it was. Let me just double check that. 29 minutes. There we go. So, yeah, look, I know I talked a few of you out of Moale, so hopefully you did avoid him. He sort of looked like a guy who could make the leap the last few years and just hasn't really done it. And at 432K, with Arrow moving back into the middle forward rotation at some point soon, I would sell him pretty confidently, and he might come out and score well next week. But in general, at 432K, you kind of need him to be really good, and he's just not going to be that guy for you. So he's a pretty firm sell in my eyes. Also, just keep an eye on this. So if he ever gets a starting spot, Lemuelu, we will be looking at him very cheap in a bit of time. Then we move through to the Dragons and the Dogs. So for the Dragons and Dogs, Tupolotu, I'm not reading into it too much, but he played great in this game. Big celebration, scored a few tries, all that sort of thing. Valentine Holmes, he has these games. He normally starts hot, actually, as well. You could look at it if you want. He'd be a big pod, not on my radar. Tupanua played a lot of minutes in the middle, actually. And even without the tries, the PPM was pretty good. He looked good in attack. I'm not going to do it, but if you want to, you can. Toby Couchman randomly playing 70 minutes in this game was pretty crazy. So his brother, what's his name? I think it's Ryan Couchman, picked up a pretty bad injury. So, rough go for him. And then we also saw Jack DeBellin go for a HIA. We saw the hookers didn't really play on the field at the same time, which was very surprising to me. So it meant that Couchman was on for 70 minutes. And if he gets 70 minutes again next week, we might have to go buy him. But I just don't know if it was the perfect storm or if he's actually going to play this role. But he could be someone that you look at, like dual position, 58 points. It's a pretty good spot to be in. Shout out to Jay-Z as well, a friend of mine who did jump on Toby, and he's going to ride that one all the way to the bank. Now, Jacob Little. And I've got to get up and run, which is probably the worst. Oh, the best synergy there for Jacob Little. But yeah, he pumped out a big score, 55 and 26 minutes. Do not read into it. Don't go buy him. Tracy was pretty good in this game, so he could have been a nice pod. We did talk about it a bit in the preseason. And then rolling down the list here, Hayes played okay. Matt Burton, I'm not reading into this score too much. 432 kick meters, 121 run meters is pretty good. Just didn't have the attacking stats, so I'm not fussed about that. Emre Gula, he's another one who had inflated minutes, so 54 minutes, 47 points. Can he do that on a consistent basis? I don't think so. I think Hame Saleh, Tom Eisenhuth, these guys coming back is going to really bring things back to earth. I think Jack DeBellin will get more minutes in future weeks. Damien Cook, only 58 minutes, so if you've got him, I'd probably go and sell him. This was the perfect storm for him to play 80 minutes, and it didn't happen. So skip. Jacob Preston, not panicking at all. If you've got Jacob Preston, same as the Gus Crichton thing, right? He is a guy who, he'll come out, he'll have these 40 games, and he'll have his big attacking days. And you see this, no attacking stats, just the 3 tackle breaks. But it was pretty much 42 in base, right? So not fussed about that. He will have his big days. Stick with him. And then rolling down the list here, Hamish Stewart. He got a bunch of minutes because of the changes. could be a guy we look at. Let's see if he holds a spot. It's just Eisenhuth probably comes in and takes that spot. Hamesel is around. Like, there's a lot of guys that could come in and steal it. But if you started with him at 230K, you're in a great position. And then down the list here, anyone else we want to read into? Probably not too much. I mean, Lockie Ilias, 27 points, even with the 428 kick meters, right? So yeah, bit of a dud. Gutho was really quiet as well. He'll get nice and cheap, and at some point I might consider him as a cash cow. Same with Reed Marnie, 21 points, and you've got the 32 tackles with 7 missed tackles, no attacking plays basically. He'll get nice and cheap and be someone we consider as well, 100%. And then Stephen Crichton. Hopefully no one pulled the trigger on this one. 13 points. Ugh, not great. And Ryan Couchman, he is out. I believe it's an ACL. So not good news. If you have him, you're going to have to move him on from your team as well. And hopefully it's a quick recovery for him in real life too, which is probably more important than, our fantasy sides. And then going through to the Seagulls and the Cowboys. Now, this game was a bit of a shootout as well. So Manly just destroyed them. Cherry Evans, I'm going to keep this simple. He's going to have these days, right? So Cherry Evans has these big boom games and has some quieter games. Don't let this score change your view of Cherry Evans. He's a bit boom and bust. We talked about him as an interesting pod in the preseason, and he's definitely a guy you can get on, but I wouldn't go chasing the score, right? He's going to have these boom games, and he has them every year, and he's had them every year for the last 10 years, right? So he's the same guy, probably a bit undervalued, so not a bad shout. Olakau'atu only played 67 minutes, got a rest because of the domination that was taking place, but scored the try, looked fantastic. The Cowboys really had no answer to Olakau'atu and pumped out a huge score. Again, I wouldn't panic and go and chase him over someone else. I still have him sitting behind a few of the other guys we've talked about, so particularly Preston and Gus Crichton. I think they'll finish ahead of Olakau'atu, but it is very close, and he was a bit cheaper, and if you potted up with him, then great shout to you. You absolutely nailed it. Bateman here. So Bateman had an interesting game. Good fantasy day with 57 points, but the 4 missed tackles there in a game where they conceded a lot of points. Had 44 tackles. I've talked to a few Cowboys fans. They weren't super stoked with him in general. So I don't know if he's going to keep that role of 80 minutes either. We saw Nanai get hooked instead, but Nanai was having a bit of a rough game too. So I wouldn't read into it too much and go and buy John Bateman myself. And then Turbo had a big day out, pumping a big score early. So he was absolutely killing it at halftime and sort of slowed down in the second half, 56 points. I wouldn't change my view on him. Ruben Garrick saved his score with that try. Was really quiet to start and, did get involved a bit more towards the end. So again, you're happy with 55 points. Take that to the bank. Braden Burns killed it. And then down the list here, probably less relevant guys, but in McIntyre, he was very active in defense. Then Tom Duffy, if he keeps the spot, he's fine. Like 39 points in that game is fantastic from him. But does he keep the spot? We got to wait for Teamless Tuesday. I'm not certain. I just think it was a rough game for the Cowboys, and he might be someone that's looked at some point. It's a contentious position in the Cowboys team. Cotter, really quiet, Drinkwater saved his score with a try right at the end when the game was over. So I was hoping he'd get a lower score so he could get nice and cheap for us and we could target him later. And then down the bottom of the list here, Reece Robson, disaster, 34 points. Again, they just got absolutely destroyed, right? They got towed up. He had 42 tackles and not much else, right? So just a really rough game for Robbo owners. Ben Trebojevic, 29 points with a try in 80 minutes. Tom Dearden, he'll get nice and cheap as well. Nanai, some of these Cowboys players could get cheap and then we consider buying them. But Nanai got hooked. Jazz Tavanga, real disaster for him. So 51 minutes, 17 points. He had the 20 tackles. Some run meters there as well. Played a bit of lock in this game too. Just not a great fantasy day for him. Normally he's a bit better than that. And Taukei'aho, we said sort of to avoid him. And he only played the first 22. He actually didn't come back after his starting stint. So, yeah, he's a pretty firm sell in my mind. Tolo Kola, he'll get nice and cheap. Just doesn't seem to get involved. That's the rough thing about him in attack. But he's got a lot of talent. So we always say this. At some point it'll come together. But when? When will it come together? That's the big question. And the Storm v Parramatta, and this is the game I just came from watching at the Paraleagues Club, Stellar's Lounge, and you can see my enthusiasm is dwindling for this one. Look, the first half was Melbourne playing full speed and Parramatta there at the ground while Melbourne played full speed. So Melbourne destroyed them in the first half and then really went quiet in the second half. So these scores are really one half of footy scores. No one really went on with it. A few guys like Meaney, Howarth, like they did, but the main Melbourne players didn't really go on with it. So Pappenhausen with 68 points. We can look at these numbers here, but a couple of tries, he had the tackle breaks as well, meters run. Like, that was a big attacking day, but we talked about him as a pod for this matchup, and he absolutely dominated it. Nick Meaney as well had a good day out. Goal kicking is a good thing. Eli Katoa grabbed the try. The score ended up not being that great. He was on 40 plus at halftime, so he didn't really go on with it as much. Went off a bit early as well. So again, if you have Katoa, you were hoping for a bigger score than that. And then down the list here, Howarth killed it. Look, 59 points for your center for 450K. You're stoked with that. So 2 try assists, 2 line breaks, the 7 tackle breaks, 239 run meters. Like, he was good. Had a few silly plays where he sort of messed up a few reads where he could have passed to other players. Like, he had one with Coates, and then he sort of went inside and ended up finding Jerome Hughes anyway. So still a bit of development in his game, I think, for the center position. But look, he's going to get plenty of opportunities, and you take that score every day. Cam Munster was on 45 after like 45 minutes, ended up on 55. So that's a bit of a disappointing finish, but he's priced at 44, so he scored well above his price, right? So I'm not too upset about that. The kick meters are pretty low. The run meters are pretty low. He kind of coasted after the start. Like, started super hot. I would have had a try as well if Pappenhausen didn't go himself and butcher the try, but I'm not salty at all. Jermaine Hopgood, 49 points, 72 minutes. And yeah, again, not great stats. Like, he had a few offloads, only 100 meters run, but the 70 minutes is very encouraging. So Madison pulled out late of this game, and Hopgood, if he plays 70 minutes every week, he'll be fine. Like, I would stick with Hopgood if I had Hopgood 100%, because he's got the Tigers next week. It's a more competitive matchup. I think you can roll with him. And then rolling down the list here, I mean, King, Coates, Hughes went off very early in this game. Panasini, Blore, Harry Grant. We can talk about Harry Grant. Had a pretty easy try. It was like an 8-point try. So really only scored about 30 points without that. Didn't really seem to get super involved in attack. Was sort of looking out, and focusing on feeding the ball out wide, or milking a few penalties here and there too, instead of just picking up the ball and going. So I don't know. I didn't really like what I saw from Harry Grant in terms of intent. It looked like he was going to defer a lot to the edges again, but I guess they were feasting on the edges. I mean, the theory behind Grant for me is that he's been an absolute force for a long time. Last year was a bit of an outlier year. Teams are going to adjust eventually and start defending the edges for the Storm, and that's going to open things up through the middle. And we're going to see a Tokamanu, who had a rough day today as well. Wasn't super effective, but we're going to see these guys open things up in the middle instead. So it didn't happen today, and he's got the bye next week. So if you do need to free up cash, I'm not totally against selling Harry Grant. I think you could do it, and I wouldn't say it's too ragey of a trade, just because the signs weren't good, right? I'll break this down a bit more deeply later on, but 59 run meters, 32 kick meters, a couple of tackle breaks, no offloads, anything like that. They wasn't really looking to do it himself today, and that worries me a little bit. Then Jack Williams had some good individual plays, but not a great fantasy score. Atoa Kamanu, only 42 minutes, 33 points. Bit of a disaster. We did talk about him, though, starting slow and warming his way into the year. That's sort of what's going to happen here. I think he will grow into bigger minutes as the year goes on, though. So we'll see that happen. Zach Lomax, really quiet. He'll get cheap. Dylan Brown, I've got my eyes on him. He'll get cheap as well. And at some point, he'll be a buy. Yongi saved his score with that try. He saved the day right at the end with that try. Hopefully, he gets the try assist and updates too. But yeah, the numbers here, 182 meters run, 3 tackle breaks. I'm all good with it. Like, I really liked what I saw from Yongi. I thought he was very positive. I thought he played, dynamic footy, broke a few tackles here and there. He tried his best, right? And he's a young fullback in a team that got absolutely tailed up. So I'm pretty excited about him. And today actually made me more confident in him, which I was already reasonably confident, but even more so. Then down the list here, anyone else we want to talk about here? I mean, Offhand Gowie, Tuolangi, Tuolangi got hooked twice in this game. So he got hooked about 12 minutes in, and he probably wouldn't have come back on if there weren't injuries, right? So Kelma, I don't know if he's going to be starting next week. If you started with Kelma, I'd probably sell him. He might have some attacking plays next week versus the Tigers. I mean, he scores some tries in the trial games. Just the job security is not great. We talked about this a lot in the preseason. This is why I like Gilbert over someone like Kelma Tuolangi, because Gilbert's never going to get hooked, right? And Gilbert's not, the ace fantasy scorer, but he's never going to get hooked. He's the club captain. Whereas Kelma is a guy that can get dropped at the drop of a hat. This guy here, Tui Vaiti, I don't know him super well. He came in really late, so Madison was pulled out, and he's come in. I've heard there's a bit of hype for him. He's a young guy, about 20 years old. He looked fantastic when he came on. He came on, bless me, and he came on against the, back end of the game, right? 14 points in 19 minutes, had the tackles, a few meters run. Big boy. So he's someone we could consider, but there's a lot of guys to come back for Parramatta, so he probably doesn't get a role. Just keep him on your radar. Riley Smith as well. I'm going to read into this a bit. So 13 points is not a good score at all, but 53 minutes is pretty good. And you've got the numbers here. He's got a few kicks, so 60 kick meters. Had a few kicks there that were pretty decent. Some negative stats. I mean, look, he's a rookie hooker coming in, and you can't expect him to do too much. The scoring wasn't very good, but he looked like the better hooker at Parramatta. So I think he's going to keep growing into bigger minutes, and he's someone that I would consider as a cash out even now. Do you start him in your 17? Absolutely not. But I think he might be the future hooker at Parramatta. He just looked very dynamic, sort of opened things up. There were times where he would create holes, and unfortunately the Para players weren't running good support. They were gassed from defense or whatever you want to call it. But he did some good individual things. So I'm actually pretty excited about him. Then down the list, no one really to talk about here. So guys, that is my around the grounds. In terms of what we're looking for this week, so we got the team list video at 4 p.m. on Tuesday. That's a live video. We go live and just pump through that. Obviously, tomorrow there's a tipping video that comes through as well. But then on Wednesday morning at 7 a.m., that's the big video. So Wednesday, 7 a.m., it's not live, so you can just watch it whenever. But it comes out, it's called Buy, Hold, Sell. So we go through our top options that we're targeting, our top guns we're targeting, cheapies we're targeting, pods, so point of difference players we're targeting. That's the big video where Biz and I both go through. We've done our research and we give you the real information. One like this, it's more first reactions. I'm just sort of having a look at the numbers with you guys, a bit of behind the scenes, but that buy, hold, sell video, that's the one to watch. I'm going to be looking for Jamie Humphries in particular. I might consider some of these Broncos players as well. So I'll think about Shibasaki. Not a great fantasy scorer, but a good run of fixtures coming up. I think he could have a few more big days. So I'm going to have a look at a few things, but I'll come back to you guys in future videos, and I'll see you guys on those. Hopefully your team went well. Peace out.